In our last lesson, we learned how Ghiyasuddin Tughluq founded the Tughluq dynasty under the Delhi Sultanate in 1320. After him, it was his son Muhammad Tughluq who killed Ghiyasuddin Tughluq and ascended the throne. In this lesson, we will be discussing the rule of Muhammad Tughluq. The rule of Muhammad Tughluq constitutes a very important period in history. This is because the rule of Muhammad Tughluq was marked by quite a few administrative failures. And these failures that were committed by Muhammad Tughluq eventually led to the decline of not just the Tughluq dynasty but the Delhi Sultanate as a whole. Now this must have made you very curious. You must be wanting to know what these failures were, as in what were the policies that Muhammad Tughluq implemented and how and why these policies failed. Now let us begin our discussion on the rule of Muhammad Tughluq. It was Ghiyasuddin Tughluq who founded the Tughluq dynasty in the year 1320. 5 years after that is in 1325, it was the crown prince Juna Khan who now ascended the throne. Juna Khan was the son of Ghiyasuddin Tughluq, and after killing him, Juna Khan ascended the throne in 1325. Soon after ascending the throne in 1325, Juna Khan swore the title Muhammad Tughluq. From this year, when he ascended the throne, Juna Khan now came to be known as Muhammad Tughluq. So, it is the rule of Muhammad Tughluq that we will be focusing in this lesson. Muhammad Tughluq reigned from 1325 to 1361. Many historians have called Muhammad Tughluq the confused genius. Why is it so? Muhammad Tughluq thought ahead of his time. He was a very well-intentioned sultan. The plans he had, the various strategies that Muhammad Tughluq had were also very good. But only on account of lack of proper execution that these policies failed, which is why he came to be known as the confused genius. The plans he thought were carried out thoughtlessly. He did not make his plans well thought out. These were carried out in hurry. Since these plans were carried out thoughtlessly and in hurry, these plans were not properly executed. These were not well organized, which is why almost all these plans failed, making him known as the confused genius. This is also one of the major reasons why Muhammad Tughluq's rule eventually led to the decline of the Tughluq dynasty and the Delhi Sultanate altogether. So, the failure of his policies, these various administrative failures, eventually paved the way for the decline of the rule of Muhammad Tughluq. Now let us find out what these policies were and how Muhammad Tughluq had thought of executing his plans. Among the major projects that Muhammad Tughluq had implemented and the projects that failed eventually, one was the shift of the capital. Now you must be remembering that during the rule of the Mamluk Sultan Iltutmish that Delhi was made the capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Following his rule, Delhi has been the capital under the rule of various sultans. But it was during Muhammad Tughluq's rule that a shift of capital was done. Delhi was the former capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Now this place called Daulatabad or Devagiri is located 1400 kilometers away from Delhi. So, Daulatabad is located 1400 kilometers to the south of Delhi. Now, during the rule of Muhammad Tughluq, the capital of the dynasty was shifted from Delhi to Daulatabad. Daulatabad is now found in the present-day state Maharashtra. Now you must be wondering why Muhammad Tughluq took this very important and strategic decision. It was a very bold and drastic step taken by him given how far Delhi and Daulatabad are. In our previous lessons, we learnt that Delhi was under the threat of Mongol invasions. This is because the Mongols from Central Asia could easily come to Delhi. Now Muhammad Tughluq thought that if he can shift his capital, his center of power from Delhi to Daulatabad, his capital would be safe from these invasions, because Daulatabad is much farther away from the Central Asian places, which is why he did this shift of capital. While doing this shift of capital, Muhammad Tughluq also had another plan in mind. Previously, Delhi was the center of power. Now Muhammad Tughluq thought that if he can now rule his dynasty from Daulatabad, he will be able to rule both the north and the south of the country more efficiently. So Daulatabad would give him more power over his dynasty. Simultaneously, his dynasty will also be safe from Mongol invasion. It is for this reason that Muhammad Tughluq implemented this decision of shifting his capital. Now let us find out what the repercussions of this decision were. When Muhammad Tughluq undertook this project of transfer of capital, he did not make any new garrison city. Instead, he made Delhi-Ikuna, or the old city of Delhi, a garrison town for his soldiers. So now his soldiers were garrisoned in Delhi-Ikuna. Now you must be wondering what happened to the residents of this city. The residents of this city were now compelled to leave Delhi and move to Daulatabad. Now you must be wondering what happened to the residents who were living in Delhi-Ikuna. When Delhi-Ikuna was made the garrison town, the people who were living in this city were now compelled to leave Delhi and move to Daulatabad. Now you must be wondering what happened to the residents who were already living in Delhi-Ikuna. When soldiers were garrisoned in this city, the residents of this city were compelled to leave Delhi and move to Daulatabad. Coupled with everything, we should keep one thing in mind. Muhammad Tughluq was very well intentioned. When he thought that he would shift his capital, he actually wanted to keep his subjects safe from Mongol invasion. But the plan he thought of wasn't a very good one. And at the same time, it was not properly executed. It is because in the very hot month of April, this shift of capital was performed. So a lot of people could not make it to Daulatabad because the temperature was very high and people were dying of that heat. They were also dehydrated. And the few people who made it to the city were now suffering. They were dying of homesickness, summer and plague. These people who were living under the Tughluq dynasty at this point were suffering only because of the whimsical decision of their sultan. The plan he had behind this shift of capital wasn't a bad intentioned one. But since it was not properly executed, it was not well thought of that the masses were suffering. This is one of the major failures that Muhammad Tughluq suffered during his rule. Soon enough, Muhammad Tughluq realized that his decision to shift his capital from Delhi to Daulatabad was wrong. It was a wrong decision on his part. Now, how did Muhammad Tughluq realize that it was a wrong decision on his part? This is because previously Delhi was the capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, when Delhi was the capital, the Sultan himself stayed there. He stayed there with his troops, his army, his soldiers. So, it used to be a very fortified center of power. Now, after the Sultan himself left Delhi and went to Daulatabad, Delhi was left unprotected because the Sultan wasn't there to keep a tab on everything happening in this city. In a way, this made Delhi even more vulnerable to foreign invasions. This is because Delhi was now left completely unprotected from foreign invasions that might have come from Central Asia. It is for this reason that Muhammad Tughluq realized that he had made a very wrong decision. It was a very wrong step made by him to shift his capital. Now, what did he do after this? Did he leave Delhi and stay in Daulatabad and have it as the only capital of his dynasty? No, because soon after, he ordered a shift back to Delhi. Now you must be understanding how whimsical Muhammad Tughluq was. Previously, it was Delhi that was the capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Now he shifted the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. And after realizing that it was a wrong decision, a wrong step, he again ordered a shift back to Delhi. So Delhi would once again become the capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, what were the obvious repercussions of this? This to and fro movement from Delhi to Daulatabad and then back to Delhi again costed a lot of lives. Because while moving from Delhi to Daulatabad in the first place, a lot of people died on the way. Many people died even after reaching Daulatabad. And now Muhammad Tughluq again ordered a shift of capital back to Delhi. So the people who were now living in Daulatabad were again compelled to move back to Delhi. This constant to and fro movement costed a lot of lives. Simultaneously with that, his decision to shift the capital also had economic repercussions. This is because this shift costed a lot of money. Huge amount of money and resources were required to shift the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad and then back to Delhi again. Now this caused a draining of the state treasury. The state treasury was severely impacted because of this one wrong decision that Muhammad Tughluq made. Now this was the first wrong decision of Muhammad Tughluq that we just discussed. You must have inferred by now why Muhammad Tughluq was called the confused genius. He was in a state of confusion because he did not know when and how he should have implemented his plans. And one such faulty plan was his plan to shift the capital. We spent quite some time discussing and analyzing a wrong administrative decision that Muhammad Tughluq took. Along with that, he also introduced the token coinage in 1330. Now, what does this token coinage mean? This token coinage was issued by Muhammad Tughluq, on account of which coins that were made of copper and brass were now stamped with a value that was equal to that of silver. Now you must be wondering, how did this happen? Because these coins were made of brass and copper, and on them were marked the value that was equal to that of silver. How did this token coinage take place? Let us try to find this out. A major reason why Muhammad Tughluq issued this token coinage was an acute shortage of silver. So it was due to a shortage of silver that now coins that were made of brass and copper were given a value equal to that of silver. Now what did this token coinage lead to? This token coinage was another failure on the part of Muhammad Tughluq. This is because while the state minted these brass and copper coins with the value equal to that of silver, these coins were minted without royal insignia. Now, due to the absence of this royal insignia on the coins, something took place. That is, this absence of royal insignia resulted in something very negative. What was it? It was widespread forgery. Now, why did this widespread forgery take place? I suppose you must have seen your parents going to banks and other important offices, and whenever they have to take any document to that office or bring any document from that office, they sign on those documents. Now, what is that one signature intended to do? That one signature makes it a legal document, that is, gives the document a legal status. Now, without this royal insignia, the coins that were being minted by the state itself were also not legal, which is why fraud coins were now being minted in the houses of people themselves. People were making fraud coins in their own houses, and these fraud coins in turn flooded the market. This caused a severe economic inflation, which is why Muhammad Tughluq had to stop that token coinage system. That is, he had to stop the usage of those copper and brass coins which carried the value equal to that of silver. So now this is another failure on the part of Muhammad Tughluq. This is on the economic front, that his token coinage led to severe inflation in the market. This led to economic losses that his dynasty suffered. The first policy that we discussed in this lesson tells us how Muhammad Tughluq made a wrong administrative decision, and this now is another wrong economic decision. Let us now find out few other reasons that together contributed to the decline of the rule of Muhammad Tughluq. In order to gain revenue, Muhammad Tughluq had increased the existing taxes and imposed certain new taxes, certain new land taxes on the Ganga Yamuna Doab. Now, the Ganga Yamuna Doab, you must be knowing, is a very fertile land. That is, this land yields very good agriculture. Now, it is for this reason that Muhammad Tughluq thought that if he can impose new taxes on the lands in this Ganga Yamuna Doab, he will be able to earn huge revenue. This plan he thought of to gather revenue wasn't a very bad one. But as luck would have it, famine broke out in the Ganga Yamuna Doab. So around the year 1326, when Muhammad Tughluq had increased the existing land taxes along with imposing certain new land taxes in the Ganga Yamuna Doab, that a famine broke out. Now, what happened after this? Owing to this famine, no crops grew in this area, that is, agriculture failed in this year. Now, his idea of gathering revenue from this area also failed. So, this idea of gaining revenue from this prosperous, fertile tract of land ended up in another fiasco. What did this lead to after this? That is, what happened after this famine broke out around the year 1326? The peasants were the worst sufferers. This is because the famine caused very bad agricultural yield. They could not produce anything. This fertile tract of land could not produce any agricultural products. And so, the peasants were the worst sufferers of the lot. And when new taxes were imposed on them, simultaneously with an increase in the existing taxes, the peasants suffered heavily, which is why they broke out in riots. These peasants were now rebelling against the Sultan. These peasants were also manhandled by the officers who collected revenue in these areas. Needless to mention, the condition of the peasants in this situation was absolutely miserable. Now, what was Muhammad Tughluq doing here? As in, what did he do after implementing this new idea of increasing taxes on an area where famine had broke out? Muhammad Tughluq saw that the peasants were unable to pay the increased taxes. They were unable to pay the new taxes, which is why rebellions and riots were breaking out. So, the Sultan tried to help out these cultivators. What did he do? In an attempt to help these peasants and cultivators, he was giving them loans. He was giving these peasants loans to buy seeds and bullocks. But this plan was too late to arrive to the peasants. Why? Simultaneously with giving the peasants loans to buy seeds and bullocks, the Sultan, that is Muhammad Tughluq, was also making arrangements for the digging up of new wells. These new wells would provide water for irrigation purposes. In this case as well, Muhammad Tughluq realized that his idea backfired. His idea did not go down well with the masses. So the peasants were breaking out in rebellion. But this idea wasn't a very bad one, because the Ganga Yamuna Doab was a very fertile tract of land. But it was his sheer misfortune, because of which famine broke out and this idea also faltered. But this helps from the Sultan, that is helps in the form of loans and arrangements for the digging up new wells, came too late to the peasants, because the peasants had already begun abandoning this land. They were not able to grow any crops in that Ganga Yamuna Doab because of that famine, which is why the peasants, the cultivators, had started abandoning that land. And like always, this one scheme of Muhammad Tughluq was also met with failure. So the first failure that Muhammad Tughluq encountered on the administrative front was his shift of capital. Next we came to how economy was faltering during his rule owing to the faulty coinage system or the faulty token coinage. And now here was another scheme that was in pieces. All these schemes, all these projects implemented by Muhammad Tughluq ended up in drastic failures at the end. With this discussion, we could for one more time understand why Muhammad Tughluq was called the confused genius. He had a lot of plans. He had quite a few good strategies. But neither of these was properly executed, which is why everything ended up in failure. It is few of his other projects that we will be discussing in our subsequent lesson, and also we will try to understand why all these projects together led to the decline of Muhammad Tughluq and who was the next Sultan under the Tughluq dynasty. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.